At 5:12 a.m., Sarah Bennett's alarm buzzed against the nightstand in the darkness of her apartment. For a few seconds, she didn't move. Her body felt heavier than sleep itself. 32 years old and exhausted in a way coffee could never fix. Outside her apartment window, Chicago still slept beneath the cold blue shadows of early morning. Cars passed occasionally below, headlights slicing through silence. Sarah closed her eyes again for exactly 3 seconds before reality returned. Medicine, breakfast, emails, deadlines, bills. Her mother, always her mother. She pushed herself out of bed. The apartment was quiet, except for the sound of the heater humming weakly against the winter cold. She walked softly down the hallway toward the second bedroom. The door stood slightly open. Margaret Bennett lay asleep under a knitted blanket, her silver hair scattered across the pillow. For a moment, Sarah paused. 3 years ago, Margaret had still been herself. Sharp, funny, independent. The type of woman who remembered birthdays without calendars and corrected Sarah's grammar over dinner. Then came forgetfulness, missed appointments, burned pans, lost conversations. Then the diagnosis, Alzheimer's. A disease that didn't simply steal memory. It stole pieces of a person, slowly enough for everyone to watch. Sarah crouched beside the bed. "Mom?" Margaret stirred. Her eyes opened slowly. Fear arrived first. "Who are you?" The words still hurt. After 3 years, they still hurt. Sarah forced softness into her voice. "It's me," she whispered gently. "Sarah." Margaret stared. Seconds passed. Then recognition flickered weakly. "Oh," she said quietly. "You look tired." Sarah laughed softly. "You too." Morning routines had become military operations. Medication, bathroom assistance, helping Margaret dress, making sure she remembered breakfast halfway through eating it, answering the same questions repeatedly. "What day is it? Where's your father? When are we going home?" Home, even though they already were. At 7:10 a.m., Sarah balanced scrambled eggs in one hand while answering work emails with the other. Her laptop blinked. Reminder, leadership performance meeting, 8:30 a.m. Her stomach dropped. She forgot. Again, neatly forgetting things had become part of surviving. Her manager, Ethan, had started noticing. Professional consistency. That was his favorite phrase. Sarah hated it because caregiving had no consistency. Alzheimer's did not respect schedules. At 8:28 a.m., Sarah sat before her laptop, wearing a wrinkled blouse and tired eyes. The video meeting began. Bright smiles, perfect hair, coworkers speaking confidently about growth projections and performance metrics, people whose lives still moved in straight lines. Ethan leaned toward his camera. "We need stronger commitment this quarter." Commitment, another word Sarah secretly resented. She wanted to ask if surviving counted as commitment, if sacrificing sleep counted, if cleaning vomit at midnight before presenting spreadsheets at 9 a.m. counted, if grieving someone still alive counted. Behind her came Margaret's shaky voice. "Sarah?" Sarah muted herself. "1 minute, Mom." Ethan continued. "We need leadership visibility." Visibility. Funny word. Sarah had never felt more invisible in her life. When the meeting ended, Ethan messaged privately. "Need to discuss your engagement lately." Her chest tightened. Before she could reply, crash. Glass shattered in the kitchen. Sarah rushed out. Margaret stood frozen beside broken ceramic pieces, trembling. "I'm sorry," Margaret whispered immediately. Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Fear sat inside Margaret now. Everything frightened her. Mistakes frightened her. Memory frightened her. Silence frightened her. Sarah crouched beside her. "It's okay." Margaret started crying. Heavy crying. Childlike crying. The kind born from confusion. Sarah wrapped trembling arms around her mother. And suddenly, unexpectedly, she cried too. Quietly. Silently. Because exhaustion had nowhere left to go. Because loving someone while watching them disappear felt unbearable. Because caregiving felt like mourning stretched over years. That night, Sarah skipped dinner again. Hospital bills waited on the counter. Medication costs climbed every month. Her savings account had become survival money. The promotion she once dreamed about quietly disappeared without announcement. 3 years earlier, she had been the rising analyst everyone admired. "You're going places," coworkers used to say. Now, she mostly went to pharmacies, doctors, insurance offices. Her younger brother Daniel called once every few weeks from Seattle. "Wish I could help more," he'd say. But help never came. Just guilt wrapped in apologies. "You understand, right?" Sarah always answered yes, because saying no required energy she no longer had. At 10:47 p.m., after helping Margaret sleep, Sarah stood alone in the kitchen, staring at her reflection in the dark window. She looked older, lonelier, smaller somehow. Her phone buzzed. An old college friend announcing pregnancy photos. Another engagement. Another promotion. Another life continuing. Sarah placed the phone face down, then cried standing beside dirty dishes. Not dramatically, not beautifully, just quietly. The kind of crying nobody witnesses. The kind modern adulthood hides.
Only survival. Only sacrifice. Only invisible labor nobody respected until it ruined someone. That evening, Sarah sat inside her parked car after grocery shopping and cried harder than she had in years. She cried for herself, for lost dreams, for sleep, for youth, for ambition, for loneliness, for resentment she hated admitting. Because some days, love felt heavy, and heavy things hurt to carry. Winter turned to spring. Margaret declined faster. Some mornings, she forgot Sarah entirely. Other mornings, she remembered too much and cried for hours. One rainy Tuesday, Sarah entered the bedroom carrying tea. Margaret looked strangely clear-eyed, calm, present. The old version, the real version. "Sit with me," Margaret whispered. Sarah froze. Her mother rarely sounded like herself anymore. She sat carefully. Margaret touched her hand. "You're tired." Sarah smiled weakly. "I'm okay." "No," Margaret said quietly. "You're breaking." The words shattered something inside her. Sarah looked away immediately. Tears burned. "Mom?" Margaret squeezed her fingers gently. "You always try to save everyone." Sarah started crying before she could stop herself. Real crying. Ugly crying. Years of silence collapsing. "I don't know how to do this anymore," Sarah whispered. Her voice shook. "I'm so tired." Margaret's eyes softened. For a moment, Alzheimer's loosened its grip. You were never supposed to carry everything alone. Sarah lowered her head into her mother's lap like she had when she was 10 years old. And for 20 beautiful minutes, Margaret remembered. She stroked Sarah's hair, called her sweetheart, asked about work, laughed softly. The mother Sarah had been grieving returned. Briefly, miraculously, then suddenly, gone again. Margaret blinked, confused. "Who are you?" Sarah smiled through tears. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's Sarah." Summer arrived. Medical complications worsened. Hospital visits increased. Doctors spoke in soft, professional voices. Words like progression, cognitive decline, long-term care. Sarah nodded through conversations she couldn't emotionally survive. One night, around 2 a.m., Margaret woke frightened. "Stay with me," she whispered weakly.
Sarah sat beside her bed, holding her hand. The apartment remained silent, except for city noise drifting through windows. Margaret stared toward darkness. "You're a good daughter." Sarah swallowed hard. "You taught me." Margaret smiled faintly. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For making your life hard." The sentence broke her completely. "No," Sarah whispered immediately. "No, Mom." But tears came anyway, because love had become grief, because caregiving had become guilt, because both things could exist together. Hours later, Margaret fell asleep. Sarah stayed sitting beside the bed until sunrise. 3 days later, Margaret passed away quietly in hospice care. No dramatic movie speech, no perfect goodbye, just silence, stillness, a hand growing colder in Sarah's trembling fingers. Afterward, life felt strangely loud. The apartment echoed. No medicine alarms, no repeated questions, no midnight wandering, no frightened voice whispering Sarah's name. Only silence. People told Sarah to rest now, move forward, heal. But grief after caregiving felt complicated, because alongside heartbreak lived something uglier, relief, and relief made guilt bloom. One evening weeks later, Sarah opened a kitchen drawer searching for batteries. Inside sat Margaret's handwritten recipe cards: chicken soup, apple pie, holiday stuffing. Sarah stared, then collapsed onto the floor crying, not because of death.
Sarah's silent sacrifice. Because caregiving had broken her. But somewhere inside the breaking, it also proved something terrifyingly beautiful. Sometimes the strongest people in the world are not the loudest. Sometimes they are simply women standing in dark kitchens at midnight, exhausted and grieving, quietly choosing love again tomorrow.